Hey folks, real quick, I wanted to pull this up on screen, make a video about this preview content of a new Barbarian subclass, the Path of Wild Magic. You can find this download out there. I'll put a link in the description where you can find these downloads. I believe WotC has released a preview of this new Barbarian subclass, and there's also a new Warlock subclass. But I'm just going to briefly talk through this Barbarian subclass real quick. So this is, as indicated there on screen, this is preview content. And this is a new subclass that's going to be released in the upcoming Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, the official WotC book. So what I believe occurred is they started working on this. I don't know if it's from UA or where they brainstormed and came up with the initial Path of Wild Magic Barbarian subclass, but apparently they've made some changes in it or to it. And this is the current iteration. This is the current version. Now, I'm not going to say that this is the official new subclass, so run with this and you're good to go, because of course, until Tasha's actually releases, WotC, of course, is free to make any changes as they see fit. But as it stands, this is the most current and updated version of this new subclass. Point of the video is just to simply talk through it really quickly. I always approach everything, as you may know, from a very dungeon master perspective. I don't know a whole lot about builds and PC stuff from the player perspective, but you know, I wouldn't mind just kind of starting some discussion. Just let me know if this is something that you would play if you were playing a Barbarian, if this is something that sounds like it might be necessary for the game, if it's cool, if it's bad. Otherwise, I'd just love to see your thoughts as players of what you think of this new Barbarian subclass that, as I said, should be releasing in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. They're going to release this regardless, whether it's exactly as written. Who knows? Things may change from now, but this is the current version of it, released as part of sort of the D&D celebration 2020 with the new Rime of the Frost Maiden, all that stuff. So let's see what's what here, right? We have a Barbarian, Path of Wild Magic. Many places in the multiverse abound with beauty, intense emotion, and rampant magic. The Feywild, the upper planes, and other realms of supernatural power radiate with such forces and can profoundly influence people. As folk of deep feeling, barbarians are especially susceptible to these wild influences, with some barbarians being transformed by the magic. These magic-suffused barbarians walk the path of wild magic. Elf, tiefling, Aasimar, and Ganassi barbarians often seek this path, eager to manifest the otherworldly magic of their ancestors. I've always been a big fan of I don't mind kind of the reckless barbarian, right? Because to me, that screams what barbarian has always been to me. Just sort of go in there, take the punishment, dish out as much damage as possible. So kind of I get advantage on all my attacks, but everything hits me with it. So I like that barbarian. So far, my favorite subclass has always been, I think, the Ancestral Guardian. I just love the hit die and the durability of a barbarian and all of that resistance where you're just this unkillable juggernaut. So that's always been my favorite. I have briefly looked through this and it sounds kind of interesting. It's pretty cool. So the big thing with this guy, of course, is wild magic. All right. So what do you get? At third level, your Path of the Wild Magic feature is called Magic Awareness. As an action, you can open your awareness to the presence of concentrated magic. Until the end of your next turn, you know the location of any spell or magic item within 60 feet of you that isn't behind total cover. When you sense a spell, you learn which school of magic it belongs to. That's kind of cool. So it's until the end of your next turn. As long as it's not behind total cover within a certain range of you, you just can tell when there's magic in place. That's pretty neat. It definitely seems like it takes away more from the physicality of the barbarian and it starts getting into and weaving into the essence that these guys sort of feel magic. So it's kind of neat. You know, it definitely follows the theme. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus and you regain all of it when you finish a long rest. All right. This is the big one here. Wild Surge. That you get this at third level. So once you pick the subclass, you're going to get Magic Awareness and Wild Surge. The magical energy roiling inside you sometimes erupts from you. When you enter your rage, roll on the Wild Magic table to determine the magical effect produced. If the effect requires a saving throw, the DC equals 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your con modifier. Okay, so whenever you enter Rage, you roll on a Wild Magic table. Very quickly, I'll scroll down. There is a table here, which is based on a D8. This is the Wild Magic table that you use and reference at all times when you're playing this subclass. Here's some of the cool things I like about it. So Wild Magic is something that I believe from a dungeon master perspective, it adds these seeds of inspiration, right? It provides some possible content that you have to adapt to, right? Because you don't know what you're going to roll on the chart, and they can bring about some interesting things. It's a lesser form of like the deck of many things, right? When you draw from that deck, you never know what you're going to get. Wild Magic is the same, and Wild Magic has been something that's been a part of like the Sorcerer origin. The problem with that, I've never had any of my players, and I've had a lot of Sorcerers played in my games, and I think I played a Sorcerer myself, but I went Divine Soul when I was playing in another DM's game. No one has ever picked the Wild Magic origin, because I think if you were to look through it, number one, it's a D100 chart, so it's kind of all over the place. Some effects don't seem to do much. Other effects seem a little more grandiose than the other. But the big thing is, I think as it handles, or as it's written with the Sorcerer, whenever you cast a spell, the DM can ask you. So a lot of it sounds like it's very subjective to how the DM wants to play it out. And he asks you to roll a d20, and only if you roll a 1. I think I might be right here. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments and I'll amend it in my comments as well. But I believe when the DM asks you as a sorcerer to roll along the Wild Magic chart, you roll a d20, and only if you roll a 1, so what, 5% chance, do you then roll on the Wild Magic chart. So the big issue with that is the Wild Magic and the interest of that and the possible excitement. It just doesn't come up as often enough. Therefore, why pick it? Why not pick Divine Soul, or why not pick Draconic Bloodline or something like that? So while Wild Magic is in place as written with a class, the Sorcerer, it just doesn't come up enough. What I like here is it's a lot more simplified. It's only a D8 chart. And as said, when you enter your rage, that's the key theme to a Barbarian. So it's going to happen. I love that this Wild Magic thing is going to take effect all of the time. Basically, every time you're in combat, you're going to be rolling on this Wild Magic chart. So that's really cool. And you'll notice how a lot of these other higher level ones play off of that whole Wild Magic chart. So there it is. Let's kind of go over it one more time because that's the big one. You get this as soon as you pick the subclass at 3rd level, Wild Surge. When you enter your rage, you roll on the Wild Magic table to determine the magical effect produced. If there happens to be a saving throw involved with that, you're going to look there to figure out how to handle that. Okay? Let's see. Bolstering Magic. This is your 6th level magic feature. You can harness your Wild Magic to bolster yourself or a companion. As an action, you can touch one creature and confer one of the following benefits of your choice to that creature. Either for 10 minutes, the creature, which remember can be you, can roll a d3 whenever making an attack roll or an ability check, and you can add the number rolled to that d20. Obviously, being 10 minutes, that's going to apply for the entirety of a combat, right? Combat's not going to last 10 minutes long. So an entire encounter, you can choose either for yourself or for an ally. You give them a d3. Basically, take a d6. If they roll a 1 or 2, it's a 1. And they can add that to any attack roll or ability check. So it's kind of like a blessing type thing, right? Or the other option you have is you can simply roll the d3 right now. And the creature that you touch, which, well, unless you're multi-class, you're not going to have any spell slots. But the creature regains 1 expended spell slot, the level of which equals what you rolled, a 1, 2, or a 3. Okay, and the person that you're touching to get that spell slot back, they get to choose. Once they receive that benefit, that creature can't receive it again until after a long rest. Because remember, right there at the bottom, you can take this action a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. And you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So this is a 6th level feature. When your Barbarian is 6th level, your proficiency bonus, I believe, is a +3. So you potentially have 3 charges of this, and you can mix and match which of those 2 bullets you want to use. So say I have 3 charges of it. I can touch one wizard, giving them a 1, 2, or 3, and they can replenish a spell slot, depending on what I rolled. But I can't do that again to that same wizard, but I can do it to a sorcerer, and then I can also do that to my cleric, right? Or I can do 2 of my charges by giving spell slots back to my sorcerer, spell slots back to my wizard, and then for 10 minutes, give myself a d3 in combat, okay? So you can see how that works. It's pretty cool. Your 10th level Path of the Wild feature is called Unstable Backlash. When you are imperiled during your rage, the magic within you can lash out. Immediately after you take damage or fail a saving throw while raging, you can use your reaction to roll on the Wild Magic table and immediately produce the effect rolled. This effect replaces your current Wild Magic effect. I love this because as we get through that chart in a little bit and we look at what are the options for when you roll on that Wild Magic chart, I love here that Granted, you have to be 10th level, but I love that you can change it. There's a couple that you might want to fish for that I believe are on the Wild Magic table that are really damn powerful and really cool. One that lets you like teleport, so you'll see in a minute. And I love here that anytime you take damage or fail a saving throw, this effect can happen. You're going to be taking damage. So this is something that's going to happen all the time. And every time you take damage or fail a save, you can choose to use your reaction to re-roll on that D8 chart. Because you're rolling a D8, there's a good likelihood, the odds are that you might find what you're looking for. Okay, and you don't have to. It says you can use your reaction. Once you find what you want, you don't have to keep switching it up. But I love that you can keep changing it, fishing for that wild magic effect you want. So that's really cool. And then finally, your big one is Controlled Surge, which is your 14th level feature. When you roll on the wild magic table, you can roll the dice twice and basically choose which of the two effects to unleash. If you roll the same number on both dice, you can ignore those and basically choose any effect you want on the table. So you can see how the level 10 feature, the level 14 feature, they all play into that wild magic chart, right? So let's see what's on the chart, because that's sort of the essence of this class, right? If this chart wasn't very good or didn't have anything worthwhile, this might not be a very appealing subclass. So here it is. Remember, you roll 1 through 8. As soon as you rage, you roll on this wild magic chart. At level 10, anytime you take damage or fail a saving throw, you can roll again on this chart if you want to spend a reaction to try and get something else. And at 14th level, anytime you roll on this chart, you're going to be rolling 2 dice and you get to pick the result. So if you roll a 1, each creature of your choice that you can see within 30 feet of you has to succeed on a con save. If they fail, they take 1d12 necrotic damage. And you also gain temporary hit points when you get this effect, equal to a d12 plus your Barbarian level. Okay, so you kind of get buffed up. And those within 30 feet of you have to make a con save, otherwise they take some necrotic damage. Kind of cool. This one I really like. If you roll number 2, you teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space that you can see. Until your rage ends, you can use this effect again on each of your turns as a bonus action. So obviously I know there's some classes or some of the Barbarian features and whatnot that might play into bonus actions. And that's always a big thing, obviously, with rogues, right? Like, what is appropriate use of your bonus action? You have a lot of options. Here, if you happen to have sort of what I call a dead bonus action, like nothing to do with it, that's a pretty damn viable. As long as you're raging, every turn as a bonus action, you can teleport 30 feet. That's an awesome wild magic effect to have in place. So gives you a lot of mobility for a class that already has a lot of play through moving around on the battlefield because they're so durable and resistant and things like this, right? Number 3. An Intangible Spirit, which looks like a flump or a pixie, you choose, appears within 5 feet of one creature of your choice that you can see within 30 feet of you. At the end of the current turn, the spirit explodes, and each creature within 5 feet of it must make a dex save, otherwise they take 1d6 force damage. Until your rage ends, you can use this effect again by summoning another spirit on each of your turns as a bonus action. You notice here we have a bonus action thing. Now, this is not going to conflict with the bonus action of teleport because remember, you only ever have one wild magic effect in play at a time. So you're only going to have effect number 2 or number 3. It's just that level 10 feature where you take damage or fail a save, you can change it, okay? But I just love the way they're doing this where while you're still raging, right, until your rage ends, as your bonus actions, you have just these extra things you can do. In this particular case, you have this exploding spirit, basically, that you can keep summoning. Number 4, a bolt of light shoots from your chest. Iron Man. Another creature of your choice that you can see within 30 feet of you has to make a con saving throw, or they take 1d6 radiant damage, and they're blinded until the start of your next turn. That's huge. I believe that condition gives like disadvantage on attacks, things like this. Until your rage ends, once again, you can use this effect again on each of your turns as a bonus action, right? So you've got your move, you've got your great axe attack as your action, and then your bonus action, you might be teleporting, you might be making an exploding spirit, you might be shooting light from your chest, causing radiant damage and blinding people. Just gives you some more action economy. If you roll a 5, whenever a creature hits you with an attack roll before your rage ends, notice that's always a big mechanic, is your rage needs to be on at all times. That creature takes 1d6 force damage as magic lashes out in retribution, okay? So whenever you're hit at all, there's nothing you have to do. You don't have to spend a reaction or anything like that. They just keep taking this. And force damage, I mean, other than psychic, that's really difficult to resist, okay? So that's kind of cool. And notice that Intangible Spirit, the one that explodes, that deals AE force damage as well, 1d6. If you roll a 6, Until your rage ends, you're surrounded by a multicolored protective lights. You gain a +1 bonus to AC, and while they're within 10 feet of you, your allies also get that same +1 bonus. It's a game of numbers. There are many, many times in combat where it's like you barely missed or you barely hit by 1. It's a big deal, okay? So it's a +1, and all allies within 10 feet of you, if you kind of have a bunch of people converge and all melee with you, that's a pretty cool ability. I like that one, and I really love the teleporting ability. So giving AC to you and others is neat. Number 7, flowers and vines temporarily grow around you. Until your rage ends, the ground within 15 feet of you is difficult terrain for your enemies. I love this because it's kind of the epitome of like trying to keep things close and surrounding the barbarian and not being able to go out there and move and easily engage your backline fighters, right? Your ranger that's popping arrows from the back or your spellcaster in the back. So, the ground within 15 feet of you, and it just has some cool flavor and thematic elements to it. And then finally, number 8, magic infuses one weapon of your choice that you're holding. Check this one out. Until your rage ends, same sort of theme and mechanic, the weapon's damage type changes to force. Huge, because as we've talked about, that's difficult to resist. Okay, and it doesn't say if it already had a property like it was once a fire axe, now it's a force axe. No, it sounds like it's no longer slashing or bludgeoning or piercing. It's just force, which is huge if it's non-magical, as far as I'm reading it, because you do get a lot of things that are resistant if you're using bludgeoning, piercing, slashing from a non-magical source. Now your damage type changes to force, and that weapon, regardless of what it is, it doesn't have a category there where it says it doesn't apply to a big weapon. That weapon now gains the light and thrown properties, range of 20 and 60. And if the weapon leaves your hand, Mjolnir style, the weapon reappears in your hand at the end of the current turn. So rather than like at the start of your next turn, it's there for your reactions. And it adds that light and thrown. So a great axe, previously, a gigantic thing, I can now throw that. It has light and thrown properties. It's going to return to my hand, and that great axe is now dealing force damage. So yes, there's a bunch there. I really like the AC thing. I like the teleport a lot, and I love that number 8, though, turning your weapon into Thor's hammer, basically. I like those effects. And remember, as you rage, you roll on this chart. But what I really love is just the way as you get higher in level 10, as I said, you can, every time you take damage. So it's not like, yeah, I wish I could roll on the chart and get something else, but that's not going to happen much. Just get hurt, which is going to happen as a barbarian if you're doing your job. And you get to re-roll and get this new effect, which gives you some new options for your bonus actions and such. So overall, kind of a lot of flavor. I think with stuff like this, whether you try and determine whether this is viable or balanced or worthwhile, I think the biggest thing I'm always looking for with these new subclasses is it different enough from what already exists? And while I can't say that I've memorized every single barbarian subclass, there's a lot. The essence of this feels quite different from your berserker, right? Obviously. It feels quite different from your ancestral guardian. It feels different from my zealot or whatever. So it feels different. I love that they have, the ability to now play into the randomness of wild magic, but it's something that is more prevalent. It happens a lot. So that's it. It's 2 pages. There it is. You have the chart, and then you have all those features that play along with it. So as I said, I just wanted to make this real quick to kind of talk through. I may make a video on the Warlock one as well. I don't know as much about the essence of the Warlock, and there's a lot of moving parts that I have to wrangle through, but I wanted to just cover this guy. It is released as sort of a preview, basically D&D and WotC saying, this is what we're planning on so far, putting into the Tasha's book as a new subclass for Barbarian. So leave in the comments, for the players out there. Again, I'm more of a DM, so I don't know how this would play out. Would you play something like this? Do you like it? Is it cool? And otherwise. That's all I have for you folks. Thanks everyone for watching, and take care.